All right, good day. Good day. Doing a quick live stream. Rogue Beast Warrior coming at you. Hope your day is going well. I just wanted to document where I'm at. I'm on my third day of all protein fasting. And I'll tell you, this indoor walking is saving grace. Yesterday, I walked almost 13 miles. The day before, about 12. I've been staying extremely consistent where I'm going on my 1300th mile in the last few months. More than a few months, but it's been more like 5 months of continuous walking, get training, gradual intensity training, training when and where you can, a little at a time. And I'll tell you, doing the supplements, sticking with it, doing about 6 of these 750 milligram TMGs, if you're wondering what I'm doing, taking one trace mineral, doing the upper level, 2 different Tongkat Ali versions, doing several servings of the ATP cretinol serum, which is just really ginseng. And typically, I've been averaging, for the most part, 2 of these Vitamode by EVL, taking about anywhere a minimum of, and that's the other Tongkat. And not to mention my Crystal Light. So we get a very minute amount of carbohydrates or calories in with this, but it really is all about regulating that 0.45 times your body weight in pounds. It's the key to it all. It is mathematics, and it will allow you to take in the proper amount of calories per hour. So obviously, when doing that and figuring out that math, me at only a meager 156 to 157 pounds, I'm probably sitting like around 65 to 80, depending on the level of output, calories per hour, right? So that's not even 1 scoop of protein powder. So every half hour or so, I'll chug some protein, keep those macronutrients coming in, driving what I would only term nowadays. I used to say that I'm going into gluconeogenesis, but there seems to be an indirect, non-parallel, but shared position, right? Even when you get into fat adaptation and a lot of the discourse that Thomas DeLure talks about on his channel, which is you can stay fat adapted. You can technically go out of ketosis when you're a highly trained, highly fit athlete, right? Taking in as much as these studies have showed, 300 to even above that, as long as you're exercising, when you're taking in the carbohydrates, right? And I would dare to say that to conjecture that you're only going to do a partial carbohydrate load, having gone on these long-term protein fasts. And for those of you who are tuning in, who were part of my original station, how you doing? I saw you too easy out there. Awesome, good to have you. Welcome. You see what I went through. I told you. I was going through metanoia. You saw me go through the catharsis. And I said, when the time comes, I will come back and I will erase all my footage. Bonfire of the vanities, destroy my vanity. And I did, and it was very painful. But here I am coming out the other side, so to speak. And by the way, these aliens and this whole talk about disclosure. I know this is, subtext. I'm just gonna mention it real quickly, and that is they're collecting all the data for the end of the world and making sure that everything is in its place when the pole shifts go through. Just saying. So back to what we were talking about before, and that is my focus has always been on orthomolecular nutrition. That's what I focused on through my whole career as a trainer. It's why I got great results with people. Those who listened really got a lot out of it. The problem back then was, when do you do the carb loads? How much carbohydrates do you do? And there was a real frustration with what I was just talking about, is you can't just partially carb load. Once you're loading, you're loading. You've got to complete your load, right? So that's going to be anywhere between 300 and 500 grams of carbohydrates. And then even more so, your body's signaling, right? Coming out of starvation, you need to go with the low density foods at first to start the whole carb shift. So it's a very subtle process. So when I say like a 3-day cycle, it is a 3-day cycle when you're shifting into carbo mode. And it is a long cycle coming back out of that. So for people who think, bodybuilders eat a whole box of Krispy Kremes, eat 2 boxes just to get that appeal, that look. Well, I show my results flat. My waist shrinks. It looks like I've gained fat in my lower abdominal area, but with a 29-inch waist, there's less room there, right, to disperse the fat. So that is an area of contention also, where people will get very their self-esteem will take a hit, because there they are working so hard. They're measuring, they think their waist has gotten smaller, and it has. But now, and especially because of SAG, older skin, drooping skin, you're going to have that collection where lower abdominals, chest, and it's going to appear like you have more fat. So that, a lot of times people think, how am I getting fatter? And it's like, no, you're just noticing your fat. And even more so, there's a vitality that of appearance. And even, when you're hydrating cells, that's what creatine's all about, right? And that's why it works in such an awesome anti-aging sort of way. Carbohydrates are the same way. So when you're eating enough CHO, when you're supplying enough blood, muscle, liver glycogen, most of that's water, right? Carbohydrate. So you're able to fill in and replace, and you'll see an uplifting and a tucking in, right? And so when you see yourself, when you're completely depleted, you can be a little bit depressed. Take a picture, and if you're a little older like me, you'll have like weird skin hanging. That's still fat. You can still get rid of that. And a lot of people haven't taken it to that level where they take it to an extreme. But when I say extreme, I'm talking about the latter stages of doing something that's very not extreme. You just continue on the course. You never get to a place where you're complacent, where you're kicking back, where you're like, oh, I'm done exercising. Thank God I got down to that weight. You're never there. You stay progressive in the attribution of what you do. So after this week, I'll be going back on carnivore. Now, never have I gained any fat or any fat weight back when I've been on carnivore. Losing it is a whole nother story. The body will get very creative, especially when you're taking in ample amounts of fat, to hang on to pocketed fat. So if you've gotten yourself into a mess, if you've done something very extreme that has morphologically changed your shape, you're going to need to go through that process of alteration, and it takes a while. It takes several cycles. I used to going to take one earphone died. I used to say that it's going to take 26 to expect 26 cycles, or really 6 months to a year. 6 months to a year. I think that might be working. 6 months to a year of constant cycling on and off. So when I say cycling, I'm talking about going on an all protein fast. And the way that I used to refer it is, when I say a 3 or 5 day cycle, you're then carbohydrate loading. In the past, I would do these partial loads, just enough to gain some sanity, and then go back in. But what happened was, the body doesn't like that. If you're going into and eating carbohydrates, finish the damn process. So you're really mucking things up and messing with it. When I hear doctors talk about this, I realize like Sean Baker, you got a lot of respect. I was just talking to a great friend of mine, and he was like, "Have you heard of Sean Baker?" And I said, "Yeah, check, yeah, stay with it. You know, good, solid information." But what I see is when I see people who don't have experience in cycling carbohydrates and fasting from way back in the day when they never actually did it, I can tell when they haven't done that, when they haven't taken themselves down to those really ultra lower body fat levels. You can just tell they don't understand the natural cycle, the chronobiological, circadian, and metabolic cycle, and how that's all interplaying in like what I say is a 3.3 day cycle. So that's how long it's going to take you to load. You're most likely going to have to take it, like I say, on the second day as you're going through the process of utilizing low density carbohydrate foods, right? Not creating this shock to your system. That following day, you might eat 300 to 500 grams of carbohydrates. And then that next day, your job is to maintain that, right? And exercise is great because you're still shuttling it in, but that's where you might want to go a little bit lighter on your workout. Or if you're going heavy, less sets, right? And a little bit not to your maximal, right? Because your whole goal is to get the blood flow going and to feed those muscle cells, to get the glycogen into the cells, right? And to keep your metabolism going. And I hate to say it, but the beauty is walking. Walking really does an amazing job at keeping the blood flow systemic, especially when you are fasting. But I digress. Protein fasting. And you're probably going to have to carb load for 2 to 3 days and expect 3 days. So that's where I would do clay pot cooking so that I knew everything that was in there. There was no guesswork. It was the highest quality carbohydrate sources. It's amazing how when you eat the exact amount of carbohydrates, you know it. It's called, nutritional term is being fed. And you've got all the glycogen that you need. You're not going to be hungry for another scrap of carbohydrate, right? So keeping yourself hydrated at that point and keeping the water intake up, that's the main thing. And then when you'll feel high. You'll feel this high. Sometimes it's a better high than any drug or any elation that you've ever been through in your whole life. You feel that carbohydrate high. And people get addicted to that. A lot of times athletes will get addicted to that. And there's nothing wrong with, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with those earned type of addictions, but knowing that you're not going for the high. It's an all-encompassing experience of the totality of the experience, and obviously the performance goal. But the goal just keeps going on, and it just reasserts through collectivism back into your own life, and then it really is your life goal, right? So affirming that and being able to stay focused is the main goal. So I was getting off a little bit on a tangent. Even though I had done things that were very carnivore 15 years ago, I didn't really put it all together. I thought, well, that's not so good that I feel great after eating an entire pork loin. That's a lot of fat. But that picture that's on RogueBeastWarrior, that was taken after I carb loaded. It's not carb loaded, but I pork loaded. and I was amazed. Vascular, everything was popping. Had a lot to do with the salt and the electrolyte balance just hitting my system, but the pork was so well assimilated and so close to my own tissues, right, that my body just rapidly ate it up, And then obviously being on carnivore, your body's producing some glycogen, but it's going about it the hard way, And then when you're doing these protein fasts and you're in really good shape, your body's ready to assimilate that protein. I mean, back in that day, I was taking upwards of 500 grams of protein. I don't do that anymore. I find that my muscle nitrogen balance is achievable at a much lower level of protein intake, to the point where, like I was saying, I'm on my third day of all protein fasting, and I actually have only been averaging about 2 scoops of protein per day. And I know that I'm keeping my muscle nitrogen levels up. And I'm smaller, but I look more dense and I look larger than I used to. Everything's more structural, you know? So the gym is going to be really exciting, because remember, I haven't even hit the gym yet. I haven't been using weights. I've been doing primarily just body weight exercises, pull-ups, push-ups, leg raises, sit-ups. And I hadn't even worked out for 2 weeks until I did that video yesterday on the 16th of March, 2024. So it's going to be really cool if we're still around, if the earth is still here, because we're getting pretty darn close, folks. So I'd say get yourself, your soul, your spirit, collect yourself the best way that you can, because we're in for quite a ride. But at the same time, you have to continue on in your pursuit of purification, perfection, and I wish you all the best. I'm your friend on this journey, and you can't do it without principles, and that is the main tenet, is purification and being pure and living a pure lifestyle. It doesn't have to be anything but. You're creating your own religion out of that. And you'll find that perfection is just a process, right? It's something where we just strive to be our very best, and we strive to the number, and the number is there. And the main number that you're looking at under the context of what we're talking about right now is that 0.45 times your body weight in pounds, to figure out the number of calories you should take in. And the reason that my results are going to be profoundly better is I'm now cutting back. When I go back into carnivore next week, when I'm coming off of this, I'm going to be cutting back on the number of calories per meal that I take in, so that I'm not exceeding 400 or 500 calories per meal, right? So that my body can assimilate and rebuild and replace a little bit of that glycogen, ATP, just get the energy up. And then 3 to 5 hours later, I'll be doing that again. So I'll be using the whey protein intermittently, right, while I'm on carnivore. And what I may do is I may add in a little bit of fat, so that I'm constantly keeping that ratio going and just focusing primarily on fat adaptation, meaning an MCT oil, or other, maybe olive oil, EVOO. And it's that simple. So I'll be reporting on that and showing the process, and my annex station, where I don't talk about esoteric things, and I sort of do a mixture of both, talk about philosophy, but a lot of times it's just live, long-winded flatulence of barely, you know, articulate thoughts. I just try to get raw footage, raw data on that station that I might be able to use later, might not, but I'm just trying to show the process. I'm going through the process and I'm showing where I'm at doing it. And it'll probably be a lot more fun to watch that type of thing when there's more stimulating additions to that channel, you know, i.e. new camera equipment, a new computer, and better editing in the video footage, you know, more subs, more everything, maybe some merch. I got some really great shirt ideas and stuff like that. So peace be with you, best in all your pursuits, and bless you all. Rogue Beast Warrior out.